Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Just kidding. It's a camera. I turned it on. I did that. Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for tuning in, or going to YouTube or Facebook or I don't know, wherever. Anyways, today, second episode or lesson or principle or whatever, second class. Today we're talking about bioenergetics. What does that mean? Basically, how does your body convert food into energy, and then how do we create that energy in our body, and then how do we use it? How do we train that? How do we make that more efficient and more better? Today could be kind of meaty. We got to go into some biology, some chemistry. Some people might call that biochemistry. We're gonna kind of lay some groundwork here. I'm gonna try to spare you all of the nitty-gritty details that really just honestly confuse a lot of people, including myself. We don't necessarily need all that. We're trying to get like what's the application? Why is this information even useful? Why should I even care? I hope to answer those questions for you today. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, maybe grab a notebook if you want, but it's a video, you can always go back. If you do want to learn more about the details and the science, I'll give you some references, or I'll kind of call out things to maybe do some further research on. So I could explain it, but it's not going to be interesting to a lot of people, and that's okay. Live your life, do your thing. So metabolism is just the sum of all of the chemical reactions that go on in your body. If you could somehow take out a really big calculator and add everything up, you would basically measure your metabolism. A lot of things we kind of we break down and we abstract just so we can understand it a little bit better, but we can use that to try to enhance or go towards our goal even easier, if that makes sense. So again, metabolism is just the sum of all of the chemical reactions. Basically, that's all we are, is just a walking, talking bag of chemicals, right? Think about it, it's all we are, just a bunch of atoms, a bunch of molecules, a bunch of reactions going on. It's all just chemistry going on in here. All right, so again, we gotta lay some groundwork here. The standard view of a cell, let's just take a general cell, a cell in your body. It's going to be basically a cell wall, some sort of fluid on the inside, and then there's going to be a nucleus, and that nucleus is going to have all of your genetic material, all of your DNA, and every cell in your body should have all of your DNA. Picture like a water balloon with water inside and a jelly bean on the inside of that. So that water balloon itself is the cell membrane, that cell wall, but it's permeable. Things can pass in and out of it. That's important. The fluid just kind of suspends things, makes it a little more, solid. And then that jelly bean is going to be that nucleus, and it's kind of floating around in there. Again, that has the genetic material. Not everything that gets into the cell can get into the jelly bean, the nucleus, the DNA. And that's important. So all of that, those genes, that DNA that's in that nucleus, all that really is just like a set of instructions that, when acted upon, can then create proteins. And what I want you to think about, like in terms of proteins in your body, think of them as like different tools. Yes, we eat protein, and they're broken down into their individual amino acids, but in your body, when you're making your own proteins, you're making those proteins to serve a certain function. And that is something that we can modify. We can not necessarily modify those proteins, those enzymes, as we call them, but modify like how well or how quickly or how slowly you make those. And certain things that we do changes how they're made. And that's important. So remember that. We can affect how our enzymes, how our proteins are made in our body from our genetic material. So in that fluid of that water balloon, the water, the liquid, that suspension, there's not just that jelly bean, that nucleus. There's other kind of organelles, we'll call them, other little things that do different jobs. The only one we're really going to focus on for today is the mitochondria. And if you remember anything from high school biology, it's that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So if you think about the cell as that water balloon, it's not just that jelly bean on the inside there too. There's other different like organelles, different proteins that serve different functions. The only one we're really going to talk about today is the mitochondria. Okay, and if you remember anything from high school biology, it's that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Do you remember? This is taking you back. Think back. High school biology. Good times, good friends, good people. Simpler times, right? Yeah, but again, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Powerhouse. Every cell you have. And some cells have multiple mitochondria. That's cool. And you can actually increase the number. We'll talk about that later. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so one more thing we're going to talk about is that chemical reactions, some require energy to be put into them, usually like when you're making something, building something more. Other reactions, when they proceed, release energy. Usually that's when you're breaking things apart. Those bonds, the energy is in the bonds of the atoms, between the atoms. Just remember that. When you're building, it takes energy to put into it. When you're breaking things down, energy is released. We're going to use that energy to do other things and make other things. A lot of times those reactions are paired. So if this reaction is breaking something apart, that energy isn't just like going off into nowhere. It's usually contained in like electrons or different charged particles. But then right at the same time, there's another reaction where things are being put together. So just remember that. There's a breaking, there's a putting together. They're usually paired up. What we're going to be talking about today is one such reaction. So again, energy just doesn't like float around and then get captured. It's usually things are very closely related and they're trading things off. But in order to give off energy, somebody else has to come and take it. You can't just like throw it. I think you got it. All right, so earlier I said enzyme. What the heck is an enzyme? I've heard that term. I don't really know what it means. Here's what it is. Enzyme, it's just a protein, but an enzyme is something that helps to make a reaction proceed faster. Okay, so if I have this molecule and this molecule, and if I combine them, I'll make a different molecule. Sometimes that happens naturally. They just come together and they create something new. That's usually pretty slow. But if I have a third protein, this kind of blobby thing, sort of like a lock and key, that's the lock. These two particles are the keys. They fit into that enzyme, or they go into the enzyme, and the enzyme brings them closer together faster than they would if they were apart. You can think of it as you have these reactants, these particles. Think of that as like the amount of money that you have, okay? And the finished product is what you're gonna buy, okay? Now an enzyme is like a coupon. So if I am gonna buy, if I'm gonna buy, a new shirt, it's $100. I don't know, just easy math. $100, and I only make $10 a day. Well, it's gonna take me, longer. I can't buy as many shirts. It's gonna take me longer to accumulate those shirts. But if I have a coupon, I have an enzyme that brings that price down to $10. Well, now I can accumulate more shirts much more rapidly. That's not a perfect analogy, but I think it works. Enzyme just speeds up the process, basically, is what it does. How it does so is by reducing the energy needed to combine those things, but again, that's not the most important thing. Just think that an enzyme helps a reaction proceed faster, okay? You got it. There's a lot of different enzymes. We're gonna talk about some specifics when we need to, but again, you could spend your whole life just trying to memorize all of the enzymes in every reaction. We're not gonna do that today. But one thing that is important is the activity, the effectiveness of an enzyme can be modified. And so one easy way would be like temperature. And I got this nice little picture next to me. So looking at this, if we, at the middle there, that 37 degrees Celsius, that's like your normal body temperature. Enzymes function at a certain level, but if we increase just a little bit, like say we go up to 40 degrees Celsius, which that would be probably your standard, your body temperature if you're exercising at like a steady state. The enzymes, pretty much all enzymes in your body are going to function a little bit better. That's also why I think you get a fever sometimes with an illness. That increase in body temperature increases the function of your enzymes, and then you can fight the illness faster. That's just, I'm guessing on that one, but you can see in the chart, yeah, enzymes do get better. Also, pH, so how acidic, how basic things are in your body, that's going to affect how well these enzymes work. Now, there is a drop-off if you get too cold. They don't work, and that's how you would die, is because then you can't actually your metabolism doesn't work anymore. You're too cold, you die. But also if you get too hot, what happens is those proteins, they basically denature, they break apart, they can't do their job when they're in pieces, basically. So again, like I said kind of in the beginning, nothing is static, nothing is set in stone. We can affect how well these things work in a lot of different ways, actually. So okay, so we eat food, we break it down in our digestive system, and what we're breaking that down into are going to be the 3 macronutrients. It's going to be carbohydrates, which is just a fancy word for carbon and hydrogens. There's different stuff in there, but that's pretty much what it is. Fats, and then proteins. So as far as energy used for exercise, protein only helps out about I don't know, maybe 10-15% of it. It's not really meant as an energy source. It's meant as, I don't necessarily mean meant. I mean the pieces of it are used as building blocks to make those enzymes and make things that your body then needs to use. The energy in those bonds as you're breaking those down, yeah, there is some, but again, it's not really the main driver. Carbohydrates really are the main fuel source during exercise. And I'm not saying it's just carbohydrates, but it'd be the main source. We're gonna talk about why, because the energy in those bonds, we can break that apart. We have the systems to turn that into energy. That's what we're gonna talk about today. Fats as well can be used. Again, not as predominant as the carbohydrates, but that depends on what your diet is, what your typical form of exercise is, how hard do you work. You can manipulate things to burn fat more efficiently or more effectively versus carbohydrates, but it's never going to be all fat or all carbs or all protein. It's going to be a mix of the 3. And even a little fun fact for you, alcohol also has its own caloric content. So 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, 1 gram of carbohydrate and 1 gram of protein is about 4 calories. 1 gram of alcohol is 7 calories. So something to think about if you're adding calories. Don't add calories. We'll talk about that later. But just know that those are the three main sources. Carbohydrates during exercise are what we're pretty much going to use predominantly to fuel ourselves. Okay. All right. So all of our food, what all this is about, all this energy consumption, creation in our bodies, we're basically making one molecule. It's called ATP. Maybe you've heard of it. Adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates. Basically, the big deal is in those phosphate bonds, there's a lot of energy. When we can pull one of those phosphates off, that release of energy, we can use that to do other work and other things, like contract muscles. Pretty cool. There's really only 2 classifications. There's multiple ways to make ATP, the energy, but you're either going to do it without oxygen, which is faster, or with oxygen, which is a little bit slower. So anaerobic, not oxygen, aerobic with oxygen. And really the only reason we breathe oxygen is to make this energy, or to finish the process of making this energy. So there's 3 ways that we can make ATP. 2 of them are anaerobic, so without oxygen. 1 of them is aerobic with oxygen. If you are one of my clients, if you're in my group, we've already drawn this out. There's 3 kind of peaks of where energy is used. I'll show you a different graph here in just a little bit. Actually, right here. So what we're looking at here basically is not necessarily each individual pathway, but how much of what you're producing is produced by these anaerobic processes and how much is produced aerobically. And it really depends on how long you're going to be exercising for. And this is like with intensity. So if I'm walking, I'm not going to invoke this anaerobic pathway. I'm not going to need to use a lot of energy. So this is like if I'm exercising or doing something with intensity, this is how it's kind of breaking down. But first system that we'll look at, it's called phosphocreatine. And basically you have this creatine molecule. Let's not worry about what that looks like, but attached to it is, again, a phosphate. And in that bond, when we can pull that off, you're pulling it off to make ATP, and that's where the energy is really stored. You have some of that stored in your muscle cells, and so, but you don't have a ton. And so you can use that really quickly because it's one step. It's like, let's take it off, we'll remake ATP. One step, there we go. Really quick, but really quickly used up. But that would be like the first 3 seconds of any intense exercise. Like if you're gonna sprint, like if I'm gonna sprint 10 yards, that's usually you're using that phosphocreatine pathway. The next, so once that kind of runs out, next is called glycolysis. Glycolysis is basically just glucose lysis, like breaking glucose. And I'm gonna draw it for you here in just a little bit, actually. So glycolysis is just glucose lysis, breaking glucose, and we're gonna break it, use some of those products for other things, but again, that energy that comes out of those bonds is going into making this ATP. All right, let's check out kind of how that's done. All right, so taking energy out of the bonds of these molecules, okay? You don't just break them open and there's like free energy just wherever. You have to like collect it, and usually you collect it by pairing it with like a different reaction. So think about like a water turbine though. So like how do we collect energy from like a waterfall or like a river? So like the water, here's the dam. This is the top of the cliff. There's all this water up here. It's purple water. But so there's energy in this water because it could fall down. Well, if we could set up like a big ass turbine here, and it's gonna like spin. Once the water comes down and hits it, it's gonna get it going. Then we can collect that energy. I don't know the details, I'm not an engineer, but it's kind of the same thing as far as like a chemical reaction goes. So C6H12O6 plus some oxygen, that's sugar and oxygen. Basically, if we can like pull off a little bit at a time, that's like one reaction. what comes off is energy. And then we have another product, and then we can pull off a little more carbons, a little more of these bonds, just breaking these bonds basically. And more energy comes off, we have another product, more energy comes off, we have another product, until we're left with, maybe there's a couple more steps, but our end products from sugar and oxygen, all these processes of our metabolism making ATP, we're ending up with carbon dioxide and water. Because there's these intermediate steps, we're able to make different products, pull off some ATP, pull off some ATP, pull off some ATP. All right, so this glycolysis, really it's all about, yeah, you're gonna make a little bit of that ATP from that, but it's all about the end products that you're getting from that are going and being reacted upon, and then in those reactions, sort of handing off their energy, handing off their electrons, that electron transport chain, and down the line, basically you're creating more ATP because you're doing all these other different processes. And this, when you like look at the details, so if you are interested in this, please go look up electron transport chain. And there's like animations and there's pictures and like all this cool stuff. And this is all like theory. I mean, we've measured a lot of this, but some of it we still kind of have to guess on, like how the ATP synthase works. Anyways, it doesn't matter the names, but what I'm like so geeked out on is like, these are like complex little machines, not machines like mechanical, but machines in that they're like doing a specific task. They're complex, and you have them in like every cell, and they're just doing their job. And if they didn't do their job, you wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? So like through evolution and through like our like things just fine tuning and getting better and better and better, like when you know the details and you know some of the stuff, like when you're amazed at like how things can actually not only work, but work well and work in unison or in tandem with all these other things, it's like life is freaking amazing. So that's kind of little side note. Sometimes you just gotta take a step back and just like be in awe of like what is going on inside your body. So anyways, basically there's 3 different pathways for making ATP. Kind of lay out the steps, just show you kind of schematic, because we talked about a lot of pieces, and I always want to bring it all together, kind of show you big picture. I'm a big picture kind of guy. That's my wife. Show you the big picture, kind of connect it back to what we're going to be learning in the future and why this is going to be part of your intuition. So, okay, the first system, the fastest system, phosphocreatine. You have some of this in your muscle, just sitting around. We consume it through eating like red meat, maybe other meats, red meat. And it's used up pretty fast because we can't just have a lot of this sitting around, otherwise we would just be like full of phosphocreatine. It's like a salt, I don't know. Anyways, phosphocreatine plus ADP, so adenosine diphosphate, 2 phosphates. Not a lot of energy going on there. There is a little bit, but basically that's going to become ATP and then just creatine. Have you heard of creatine before? Pretty cool stuff. Anyways, your body has ways of regenerating this to be phosphocreatine, but again, that takes energy to create that. So this takes energy. We should say this plus some energy to make ATP, because then that energy, that's like just we can use that anywhere. We can make it here and then it can float around and then wait to be used. So that's why we want to make ATP. One step, super fast to make it, to regenerate that ATP, but super fast to be used up. We cannot sustain all of our activity, a long duration of high intensity activity, with just this pathway. So phosphocreatine. Nice spot. So phosphocreatine, one step. All right, glycolysis. It's this big meaty thing here. I don't want to bore you with the details, but this is, so glycolysis. Taking one glucose molecule, going through, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps to get to, well, in the process, we're using up some ATP, so we have to put some energy into this, but then we're gonna get out a little bit more. So the net, so anyways, glucose, which let's think of this as like 6 carbons, 6 pieces. It's gonna give us 2 what's called pyruvate, which are 3 carbons a piece. So 6 divided by 2, 3, now there's 2 of them. It takes energy to do that and do it in a controlled way. But with that, what we're getting out of it, even though we're putting some energy into it, our net, our total, is we're also getting 2 ATPs, so that can be used for energy. And then also these pyruvates will be used if there's oxygen available, so it can go through this next aerobic pathway, so just wait. But wait, there's more. But also what's called NADH, and that will also be used later in the electron transport chain. So this is just like high energy bonds. We can't necessarily use it for energy on its own, but we can use it later to make more ATP. We'll see that in a sec. So just to show you though, this is already in our muscles. This is from glucose, which is sugar. We're breaking that down through 8 different steps to get a little bit of energy, basically potential energy, and then this other molecule. So let's summarize that up here. So both of those do not require oxygen. They can be done quickly because they do not. This one more quickly because it's 1 step. This one, and this is like, even though it's 8 more steps, it's still happening like crazy fast because it's at such a small scale. All right, now aerobic, using oxygen, aerobic ATP production, it's meaty. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of stuff going on. But once you get the cycle started, you know, it can just keep kind of churning it out. So it takes a little bit to get started and get going, but then once it does, it can pretty steadily keep producing more and more and more of this energy, this ATP, this usable energy. Okay, so we'll just say aerobic. And if you want to learn more, here's the proper name: oxidative phosphorylation. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. Phosphorylation, putting a phosphate onto something using oxygen. Ten steps-ish. Great. And then after that, so the NADH and FADH from that, and then also from glycolysis, they get sent to the electron transport chain. Just gonna let that sink in a little bit. Electron transport chain. This is like the outside of the mitochondria. Then you have 3 different pumps. And I don't know if they're like right next to each other. I'm guessing they're right next to each other. But then you have this like inner membrane of the mitochondria, okay? So it's like all split up. It's all cut up and stuff. Pump 1, pump 2, pump 3. And then there's this last dude, and this is like, I don't know, it's called ATP synthase. This is what's gonna make the ATP, the ATP maker. Basically, these guys, NADH, FADH, they come up to pump 1. They're like, hey, pump 1, I got some electrons that maybe you want. They're like, dude, yeah, I'll take those electrons. And I'm gonna use those electrons to take these hydrogen protons, and I need to get these out of here. I need to get these in this inner membrane space. So that first pump actually does 4 of these dudes. Get them out. They didn't necessarily want to be here. If they wanted to be there, they would like just go there. Well, maybe not, but they don't necessarily want to be here, but we're gonna like concentrate them here so that way we can use them later. It's like we're gonna, you know, think about that waterfall. Oh, this is how water towers work. We pump water up into them so that way there's that potential energy, so that way if the power goes out or whatever, we need water, we can just like let it go and it'll flow down. It's kind of what we're doing here. We're pumping it up into here so that way when we want to use it, we'll use that energy. Let's see here. So that's kind of like NADH comes over here, pump 1, it's like, what up? FADH goes up to pump 2 and is like, hey baller, I got some electrons. And he's like, dude, you're my guy. So again, 4 of these guys through pump 2 into that intermembrane space, and then from, oh yeah, oxygen, yo. This is where oxygen comes in. This is the whole reason we breathe, that we need oxygen, is it's the final acceptor of electrons in this transport chain. This is why we breathe. This is it. Because we basically need, it's basically just one oxygen atom, but you want to take its electrons with it. We got to write it like this: a half of an O2, it's 1 oxygen. Let's just think about that. But then plus 2 hydrogens. So in making that go and become water, the energy from that pumps 2 hydrogen protons out. So again, we just got a bunch of these dudes. And you're like, Chris, this is boring. I don't care about these freaking hydrogen pumps, man. You should, okay? Then we can talk about it later. But anyways, all right, so now there's all these hydrogen out there. It wants back in. This guy is gonna let it back in. And when it lets it in, I'm serious, this is our theory right now. This is what we think. This is like a turbine. It's not smooth. It's got like notches and ridges to it. But when these come back through, letting them in, it like spins it. This is really neat. It like spins it, and that energy basically takes ADP plus inorganic phosphate makes ATP. And there's a lot of this coming in here, a lot of this happening, and so this happens a lot just from these products that we made from glycolysis and the citric acid cycle. These go to this electron transport chain, makes a bunch. Actually makes, I got the number right here, -2. So if you take away the 2 ATP that came out of this step from 1 molecule of glucose You can make 2 ATP, but then you make pyruvate. So all the stuff that gets sent to this oxidative phosphorylation, you got 30 ATPs. So we'll say 10 steps from that cycle, another 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, basically. So 14 steps. Let's back up here. We're getting to the summary, if you can't tell. So I'm gonna erase. I won't erase that. So 14 steps. And those are some meaty steps. Those are like tough steps. All right, so definitely, it takes longer, but the payoff is huge. So for every, one of these steps, we get 1 ATP. From this, we get 2 ATP. And from this, we get 30 ATP. So we want to be going here. We want to breathe. We want to use that. Thank you, mitochondria, for doing this for us. Oh my gosh, this is like the coolest thing ever. So it's just a hypothesis. We can't really test it, so it can't become a theory. But the idea is that mitochondria, before we were like billions of years ago, we were like, single-celled organisms, whatever. The idea is that we were only able to do probably these. And so we weren't able to produce a ton of energy. But somehow a mitochondria got absorbed by these, so single-celled organism, here's mitochondria, it's a single-celled organism, whatever, it gets absorbed as like food, it's inside of here, but somehow it was able to survive. And then this, whatever this guy is, this is Chris, this is me a billion years ago, this guy, I was better able to survive because this guy was producing more energy for me to use. So then I had kids that had, so there's my daughter, Ava, and there's Theo. Here's my wife. This is not exactly how it works, but yeah, we all got, I was like, hey, get a mitochondria. She's like, okay. Anyway, so we have mitochondria, and they're better able to survive because they can produce more energy, and then other stuff obviously happened because now we're humans, but that's how we got mitochondria. Also a fun fact for you, the mitochondria that you have in your body are copies of your mother's. She gave you some, she's like, here's your loan, you're my kid, I'm not gonna make you pay it back, but here's some mitochondria to get you started. Then your cells made their own, but you don't have in your genetic material, you didn't, not half of them are for your dad and half of them for your mom, they're just from your mom. So next time you see your mom, say, thank you, Mom. I love you. Thank you for the mitochondria. If she doesn't know what you're talking about, remind her that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but also share this video with her. She needs to know what the heck is going on. So, okay, so where are we going with this? What are we doing? Why do I need to know any of this, Chris? Because these can be trained. These can be made more effective and more efficient. Sometimes some of these you're going to be genetically predisposed to probably do some of these better, faster, more effectively, or maybe you can, whatever the bottleneck is in these processes, because there's always one step that slows the whole thing down, and that's on purpose. That's for checks and balances and controls. But maybe you have a different bottleneck than me versus, John Smith, whatever. So how can we train these? Well, we're gonna get into that later, but what I'll say is this is gonna be sprints and rest, generally speaking. This is gonna be more kind of middle distance work, anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes. If you're working hard for that time and that's an effort that's going to gas you at that time, that's what's going to be challenging. Anything above, several minutes is going to be taxing this more so. And we can actually grow more mitochondria in our cells, weightlifting, cardio. I mean, we can do this. Certain things that we eat will help us make more, so that we can make more energy faster and better. The better able you are to get oxygen like through your body. Like if your heart is stronger, if your lungs are stronger, have a bigger capacity, if you have more, not myoglobin, maybe it's myoglobin, I'll double check, but whatever carries oxygen in your blood, if you have a bigger capacity for that, or if they're just better at it, you can get more oxygen to these cells so we can speed this up. That's not exactly how it works, but generally speaking, you can enhance things with your training, with your habits, with your lifestyle, and that to me is like the coolest freaking thing ever. If you can't tell, I'm very excited right now. So, all right, guys, this was a meaty. This was a sciencey kind of talk here, but I think it was necessary to get the point across that we have different ways of making energy. We can train those different ways. We can use that to get to our goals, but actually reverse engineering that. Whatever your goals are, that's going to help dictate what maybe energy system you need to work on the most. But then you have to like do it. You know what I mean? We'll talk more about that later. So if you enjoyed this video, please share it with somebody else who may glean some benefit from it. Like it, comment on it. These are things that like will get it out to more people. I'm not trying to make it about me, but I think the more people that have this information and the information that I'm going to be sharing in their hands, the healthier we're going to be. Again, the better decisions we're going to make, the more we're going to impact the people around us, the healthier we're going to be as a culture, as a world, as a race, or as a species, the human race. Yeah, the human race. And it's important. Okay, so please help me out. Please spread the message here. I do need your help. I can't do it by myself, but I think we're on the right path. If you liked the video, if you didn't, leave a comment. Let me know what you didn't like or did like. It's going to encourage me to keep making these even better and better. And again, just kind of trying to do the right thing here. So much love. Have a great day. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Have a great life. Have a great dinner. Have a great birthday. Have a great. Be great.